Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dale Caldwell, the host of Family Business Friday. We want to thank you all for coming. We're expecting a very, very large crowd because we have a celebrity in our midst, Al Titone from the Small Business Administration, the District Director for the New Jersey District Office at the U.S. Small Business Administration. If you have a small business, you need to know who Al Titone is. And so we're going to hear more from him, and he has a presentation. But as always, for those who have not come on, I want to tell you who we are at the Rothman Institute and what we're all about. So first, our mission is to support, promote, and research entrepreneurship with a special focus on family and veteran businesses. We wouldn't exist without our wonderful family business sponsors, and we have a separate group of veteran sponsors: TD Bank Charitable Foundation, Provident Bank, Sun Trust, CIA&J, and Tony Russo may be joining us a little later, the president of CIA&J. The programs that we have are our student entrepreneurship programs. We're part of Fairleigh Dickinson University. We have an FDU pitch competition where we have students compete for cash prizes. The winner of our competition goes on to a statewide competition held at the former Bell Labs for some additional funding. So entrepreneurship is a big part of what we do in the Silberman College at Fairleigh Dickinson University. Our Family Business Alliance, we have a number of family business members where we have a series of wonderful educational programs and a coaching, mentoring program for CEOs. As many of you know, being the CEO of a small family business is a lonely job, so we bring folks together to really mentor each other and help them through some challenges. We have Family Business Awards. This year will be our 28th Family Business Awards, where we honor the best family businesses under 10 million and over 10 million. It's going to be in October this year. Looks like we're going to, it'll be an online program, just given what's going on. But we are really looking now aggressively for nominations. So if you know a family business that has really gone above and beyond during this crisis, please email us at rothman@fdu.edu. We really want to connect with as many wonderful family businesses as possible. Our Veterans Launching Ventures program, our national program, online, just finished last Tuesday. We had, I think, about 7 different states represented. And in this program, we help veterans and immediate family members of veterans develop a business plan and really develop their business. And then a small business series where we have some leading experts for small businesses talking to groups of 80 to 100. It was in person. I'm not sure when we'll do the next one in person, but it's a valuable program. We also started Family Business Week at the same week that we have our Family Business Awards. And this is the idea of this is on the 4th week in October to have people identify and support a family business. We wanted you to do it all 52 weeks, but we think family businesses, who are about 80% of the global economy, deserve a special week. So you're going to hear more and more of that, but we're encouraging you even now to really identify and support family businesses. And our website, Family Business Week, will give you some more information about the program. We've also started something called Shop Family NJ, where you can purchase gift cards, which are never more important for restaurants that have been struggling and so on. And when they open up, it'll give you an opportunity to cash in your gift card and support restaurants when they're cash poor. Now, I also have a TV show called Family Business World, and this is Debbie Schaefer, a family business owner and of Mrs. G TV and Appliances. I'm looking for more guests, so if you're a family business owner, really love to tell the story of family businesses because so many people don't really understand what family businesses do. It's a stream show seen on rvntv.tv every Thursday at 10 a.m. and 8 p.m. Of course, our Family Business Fridays that we plan to operate at least through the end of the year, and we have great guests like Al Titone. I got a lot of great feedback about our cybersecurity program last week and many of our other programs. This is our Veterans Launching Ventures program. For more information about that, go to veteranbusinessworld.com. We also have a YouTube channel. So this video and our other videos are on our YouTube channel under Rothman Institute of Entrepreneurship. And you can see, so if you miss it or a friend missed it and they wanted to make it, our old videos will be up there probably a week or so after they're shown. We really want to be a resource, an educational resource for small family businesses going forward. I also have the opportunity to be part of the Governor's New Jersey Restart and Recovery Advisory Council, where we have really, I'm on the Main Street group. And so we're really advocating for the Main Street businesses, the restaurants, the retail businesses who have been so hurt by this. And it's been a very valuable experience so far. So, you know, we talk about this small business crisis, which is why we have Al back, who did a great job the last time he was here. And I always show this because I want to put it in context that everyone before this year used to talk about 2009, 2010 being so horrible. But you look at the unemployment, it was up 700,000, I think was the weekly max during that time. But the unemployment during 2020 dwarfs that. And it's because small businesses are such a big part of our economy. One of the things I was talking about with Al before is if I were president, I would make the Small Business Administration one of the key cabinet posts. I'd have a secretary of small business. Now they are reporting to the president in a dotted line capacity. But you look at this, you look at our unemployment at its peak, almost hit the unemployment during the Great Depression, and that's small business unemployment. I'm preaching to the choir because many of you are these small businesses, but I think we as small business leaders have to be more vigilant and more aggressive at letting the political leaders understand how important we are to society and important we are to jobs. And I always love showing and get a lot of good feedback about this, that you look at the economy and you look at small businesses under 100, about 70%. This is actually old. It's probably, has changed. 20% are under 500, and only 10% are over 500. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Al Titone, who's the District Director of the New Jersey District Office at U.S. Small Business Administration. Al, your title doesn't really, I think, say how important you really are, because you really oversee all of the federal government's relationships with small business in New Jersey. So I'll turn it over to you. Welcome, Al Titone.
Thank you, Dale. I'm not sure that I want to take on the responsibility of all federal government interaction with small business.
Blame, but, you're a conduit. You're a conduit.
So you're going to put the thing up? Or you want me to share my screen?
Why don't you share your screen? You can share your screen. That way
Okay.
you can advance it as you want.
I know. Sorry about this, folks. We should have done this beforehand, but I have no one to blame but myself.
Oh, this is perfect.
Just give it a second. It'll pop up. All right. Yep. You can see it all good?
Yep.
Okay. So, SBA, obviously, we've done quite a bit over the last several months. My staff has been going crazy, but, we're happy to do whatever we can because, small business is what we're about, and wherever we can help, we want to try. I want to thank Dale and Susan for inviting me back, because there are some programs that have just recently started. They call it the CARL program, Community Advantage Relief Loans, and EIDL, and talk a little bit more about EIDL and the PPP and some of the changes that have happened. Keep note of these. I mean, I've sent the slides to Dale and Susan so they can share them with whomever. This stuff is constantly changing, and with them talking about another relief package, they're going to continue to change. So you really need to try to keep up with this stuff because it's kind of imperative. Also, I want folks to understand all our regular programs are still available. The counseling programs, our regular lending programs. We've actually seen a big increase, not a big increase, but a pretty good uptick in our 504 lending. 504 is our commercial, strictly commercial building and equipment loan program. So anything you need, we can see right here at the, this is, the default for our website, or you can just go to sba.gov/NJ, and that'll give you our resource guide with everything that's available. These are our resource partners. If you're having any kind of difficulty, whether it's getting lending or it's getting money, you want some advice, you need some turnaround help, I mean, look, this is a historic time. We don't know what's happening, but going forward, talk to somebody, especially for those small businesses, where you need a separate sounding board. I tell folks all the time with our small businesses, you can't keep going to the same source. You want to get varied information. You want to get varied feedback, you need a different sounding board. And often the best sounding board is going to come from strangers who understand what small business is about. And that's us and our resource partners, so I strongly encourage you to reach out to them if you need help. So the Community Advantage Recovery Loan, this is brand new, just came in last week. It's specifically designed to reach underserved areas. One of the big complaints about the loans so far have been that they're not reaching enough underserved communities and underserved small businesses. So this is specifically designed to do that. And it's potentially a terrific program. It just started last week on July 22nd. And it differs from Community Advantage in a couple ways. So for those of you that don't know, the Community Advantage loan is one that's been around for a while. It's part of our main loan program, 7A program. There are certain limitations on it. This changes some of the criteria of it to make it easier for our underserved small businesses to get some cash in hand and be able to pay it back. The first line, notice it's a minimum 5-year. There is no minimum on maturity loan for a normal Community Advantage. And the minimum 5-year is designed to help spread out the payments so that, obviously it's more affordable as we go forward. The problem is if you're interested in it, and you'll see who's doing it in New York a little bit later on, it has to be originated no later than September 27th. So that's only 2 months from now. So if it's something you think you might be interested in, after looking at this, you can talk to some of our local providers and we'll find out. The biggest thing is apply no later than 27th of September, and it has to be dispersed before October 21st. So the bottom line is if you're applying in September 27th, you're probably not going to get it fully dispersed by October 1st. So back it up a little bit. If you're interested in it, see what it is and see if it can help you. The beauty of this loan.
Question for you, and I've gotten a lot of this about, does your credit matter? I mean, is this credit sensitive?
It is somewhat credit sensitive, but to a degree, it's dependent upon the provider. But the way this is structured, again, it's designed to get to those folks who normally might not be as credit worthy. Actually, most of our Community Advantage loans are supposed to be like that. Okay. So the credit is going to play a factor, but it's still potentially a great product for folks.
Wonderful. Okay.
The biggest thing that I like about this is that the small business has to go through what we call technical assistance or training. The idea is they can go through this training, and again, the next slide will show some of it, to help them get access to information. How do you cope with COVID-19? How can you turn around? What things are you not doing that you might be able to do to help your business survive and even thrive during this time? A couple of things to keep in mind. It says SBA will pay an extraordinary servicing fee. So let me address the extraordinary word right off the bat. Okay, that is not extraordinary like they're getting hundreds of millions of dollars to do this. They are not. That actually means extraordinary. Normally, they are able to charge a certain fee level because of what they do in the high risk aspect of their lending. This just means the SBA is going to give them a fee they wouldn't normally charge because they are not allowed to charge any other fees to the borrower. That's what makes this a very special program. They are allowed to use agents, but as you can see, it's a maximum of 3,000. I strongly suggest folks, if you're interested in this, to call the folks that are doing it here in New Jersey. This is the technical assistance part. The lender itself can do the technical assistance, which most of ours do, or they can hire someone else out to do it. It has to be tailored directly to the business. And again, this is very non-typical for a lot of these type of programs. So if you're coming in, and you're a fast food restaurant, or you're a restaurant or with very specific things, the idea is to make it specific to you. Right. And see, there's some of the things that they talk about doing, shifting to an online presence if you're not already there, helping you figure out how to build cash reserve, expense reduction strategies. And I'm going to tell you folks, this is probably one of the biggest things that everyone, if they haven't already, should be looking at. Both personally and professionally, we're all paying out money that we forget about. It's $5 here, it's $10 there. You know, you're paying $5 a month for an app that maybe you use 5 times a year. Those are the kinds of things that you don't think about that really can make a difference in your long-term recovery. So that's one of the big things I would have to say that this will do. And it's a minimum of 15 hours if you're going to get it. So I just got to, something just happened over there, turn that off. All right. So these are the two New Jersey-based lenders. Also, Pursuit is a national lender, so they may also be doing it. It used to be called the 504 company. Okay. But these are the two New Jersey-based lenders that are doing it. And so you have that information there. You can talk to them.
Perfect. And we will share these slides with everybody. So if you didn't get that, we'll make sure that you get that. So
okay, so thank you.
Yep.
All right. EIDL, economic injury disaster loan. Now, disaster loan. So we talked a lot about this the last time. There's been all sorts of press, all sorts of problems, all sorts of successes. You know, it's a huge program. You have to keep that in mind. Again, as we were discussing earlier, SBA wasn't built for the kind of volume that we've been doing, whether it's SBA disaster or our regular SBA programs. So I want to thank all of you who have been patient. We are trying our best to make sure things get through. EIDL is still open. Okay, so you can still apply for EIDL.
Okay.
Right. So if you haven't yet and you think you might want to apply for it, worst case scenario is you don't get it. Okay, but you know, apply for EIDL. Yes, they will tap your credit to see what your credit looks like, but I don't know exactly what their credit limit is, but I can tell you it's way below most other lenders. That I know, because I know people have actually called us surprised that they got an EIDL loan because their credit was so poor. So credit does play a part of it, but it's not a huge part. Unfortunately, we cannot see anything with the disaster loan. The only time we can see anything with disaster lending is after it's already been funded. So if you're having an issue, I know there's probably a lot of folks on the call that you applied in June, you applied in May, you haven't gotten anything, you were denied, you sent a request for reconsideration and you got they said, okay, we're going to reconsider, you haven't heard anything. I know it's happening. Believe me, I wish there was something we could do for you in the district. We can't. You just have to keep trying these numbers. I wish I had a better answer for you, but I don't. Just being straight out with you. It's difficult, you know, but the disaster office is a separate entity of SBA, and we just don't have access to their systems. EIDL advance, people keep asking us, why did it stop? Well, it stopped for a couple of reasons. Initially, it was initially supposed to be $10,000, and they quickly changed to $1,000 per employee to a maximum of $10,000. They gave away the full $20 billion that was appropriated by Congress. Now we keep getting the question, well, we keep hearing there's $100 billion for PPP. Why can't they use that? They can't use that because it's very specific. The legislation is very specific about what can be used for what. Right. So SBA is not permitted to do the advances using other lending, other loan money that might be available. So that's why it's no longer available. With this new package they're talking about, anything can happen. I learned the first month of all this that my crystal ball is broken. I cannot tell you what's going to work and what's not going to work, what's going to happen, what's not going to happen. But just kind of hang on to your seats and go through. I imagine there will be some kind of an advance. Again, I'm probably putting myself in the hot seat here, but I got to think there will be some kind of an advance going forward, possibly a retro. I mean, I would encourage you all to talk to your representatives and see what they're hearing and what the legislation is looking like, because quite honestly, they'll probably know better than I do. I want to stress this slide. We kind of knew going in there was going to be a lot of attempts at fraud in both the EIDL and the PPP. If you hear about anybody who's getting loans it shouldn't be, or who is using the money for other things, one of the big fraud cases is some guy out west bought a Lamborghini with his PPP money. You know, I've heard, well, you know, I feel bad. You should not feel bad about somebody stealing the bread from your mouth. That's what these people are doing. All right. If somebody's committing fraud, if it's EIDL, they may have kicked you out of the line. They may have caused a delay for you. They may be part of the reason that you didn't get an advance because they took the money. Okay? If you're hearing of any kind of EIDL or PPP fraud, I'm begging you, report it. And report it here, because this is eventually, if you can tell us about it, you know, but eventually we have to go here. And they want to hear directly from you. Your name is kept in confidence, but they need to talk to you about it. They need to make sure they need to back it up. So I'm begging you, if you hear anything on fraud in either the EIDL or the PPP program, please report it. It's going to help us, it's going to help you, and it's going to help all the small businesses in the state and the country. Paycheck Protection Program. So it's going to end August 8th, next week. If you haven't done it yet and you're on the fence, again, apply for it. You don't have to take it. But once it's gone, it's gone. There's still over $100 billion sitting out there. Use it. Because again, we can't use that for anything else right now. So it has to be used for PPP. Okay, and the current lending is more relaxed than it was previously. You can have up to 24 weeks of payroll costs, including benefits. Again, this is all stuff that's the same as it was. You can use interest on mortgage, rent, utilities. The idea is to keep people liquid, right? To keep things going. So there were 7 changes with this round. Extends the coverage for loan forgiveness from 8 weeks after loan disbursement to 24 weeks or December 31st, whichever came first. That's a big change, right? So it helps you, it really helps our small businesses.
Right.
The other really big change here is this went from 75% of the loan had to be for payroll related to 60%. So what does that mean? That means if you can show that you use the loan, 60% of the loan, for payroll-related expenses, which we'll go into and you can get into more detail, talk to your lender. If you need be, you can go online. Sites I saw before. You can send us a question. We'll get to you as soon as we can, but please keep in mind there's 5 of us servicing the entire state. But this is a big deal. So 40% of it can be used for non-payroll costs. Again, doesn't mean you can go out and buy a Lamborghini with it. It still has to be business-related. But, I mean, this is a big deal, and this actually has helped a lot of small businesses so far. There are certain safe harbors for reductions in forgiveness due to reductions in payroll. We're going to go over those. Again, safe harbor reductions, the 2 of them, we're going to go touch them in a bit. It increases the maturity of the PPP loan to 5 years, which is a big deal, from 2. Remember, the last time I told you, it's a really low interest rate loan, right? But if you're taking out a good chunk of money and it's not totally forgiven, that could be a big nut every month over 2 years. So they've realized that, and with the 60% for payroll and the extended time period to pay back, you might be able to handle that nut a little bit better this time around. Mm-hmm. For those of you who had PPP loans prior that still have the 2-year time limit, if you can get your lender to agree and you mutually agree to change it, you can change the maturity to 5 years. I'm not going to lie to you, that's probably not going to be the easiest call in the world because they didn't make a ton of money on these loans, but they did make some. Extending it to 5 years may cost them more money. So, but it can't hurt to make the call. It can't hurt to ask them about it if it's something that interests you. The deferral payment was also extended on interest and fees on the loans. Mm-hmm. the date that SBA remits the loan forgiveness to the lender. You don't apply for loan forgiveness, by the way. The lender applies for it. So you need to put your application into the lender. And we're going to touch on some of that. I'm not going to get into big detail because that's like an hour to 2 hour session by itself. But with loan forgiveness, do not send your forgiveness papers to the district. Do not send them to the SBA. They go to the lender that you got the loan through. And they go through everything, they process it, they send it to the SBA. But again, I'm going to touch on that in a little bit. One of the big things that we got is this last one. They removed the restriction of participating in the deferment of Social Security payroll tax if you received a PPP loan. So now that your share of the Social Security payroll tax can be deferred through December of this year, and you can pay 50% by December of next year and the other 50% by December of 22.
Hey, Al,
Yeah.
So one of the chats said that someone talked to their lender and the lender said they had to apply through SBA, but that's not true. They have to go through the lender, right?
Yes. For forgiveness?
Yeah.
Yes. And
Yeah.
for the PPP itself, yes. Everything goes through. I'm going to be
lender.
honest with you. The forgiveness was very late in coming out. We're still training lenders in the state. You know, if somebody got that answer, ask the lender to call the district. We'll have somebody run through it for them. Or, you know, we're going to be holding different sessions. So, yeah, but the forgiveness application goes to the lender. We're going to touch on it a little bit.
Right.
These are all eligible to use the proceeds. I'm not going to go through them. They're all fairly the same as they were before. Okay, I've highlighted some of the things that are either changed or what I consider to be important that folks didn't pay attention to. Again, we've said this, loan forgiveness, the 5 years approved. Interest rate is still 1%. The SBA guarantee is 100% for the lenders, so it's really a no-risk loan for the lenders. That's hopefully why they continue to do them.
Right.
Okay. So these are payroll costs. It can be included as a payroll cost, so it doesn't have to be exactly related to an employee costs. Let's see. Well, you can read this. I'm not gonna go through each one again. This really hasn't changed much from the previous. These last two I wanted to really stress because it actually still was in the previous, but people didn't get it. Qualified sick leave wages or qualified family leave wages, which is not included. Okay, so in other words, if it can be paid by something else, you can include it in your payroll costs. So these are the things that are not included. Obviously, if it's over $100,000, payments to independent contractors because they're independent contractors. They can have their own program.
Right. Al, I got a call. Someone had texted, faith-based institutions, are they eligible for the PPP?
Yes.
Yeah, they are. Okay.
And actually, towards the end of the first round of the PPP, they actually expanded what ones could be done.
Okay, good.
What types. So, yes, they are.
Yep.
Again, so, and for sole proprietor, your health insurance contributions and employer retirement contributions are not eligible. All right, so just be careful. This, some folks kind of got caught with this last time. Through no fault of their own, you know, it was hard to figure out. But just pay attention to what's not included in payroll costs, okay? Because you don't want to get stuck thinking you're at 60%, you're not.
And as I say, the devil's in the details. So you really got to know these programs. You really have to understand them.
Yeah, and quite honestly, we're all still figuring out the forgiveness part. So I'm going to give you the highlights.
Right.
Here is my caveat. This is an introduction to the application. It includes information from guidance document at sba.gov and treasury.gov. Look at them, review them, talk to your lender, okay? So this is an introduction. It is in no way, shape, or form meant to be comprehensive. Okay, so here's how it generally flows. Business owner submits a loan forgiveness application to the lender. The lender has 60 days to issue a decision to SBA. What does that mean? The lender is the one making the decision whether it qualifies or not. Mm-hmm. Ideally, they're going to take a look at it within those 60 days. They're going to say, oh, this is a mistake. Oh, he can't include this, or he missed this, or she missed this, and they go back to you so you can fix it, and then they will issue the decision to SBA. So once it comes to SBA, SBA has 90 days to review and determine if the borrower is eligible. Now, generally, from what I understand, under $150,000, there's going to be very little, examination of this. We're going to just try to do our best to make sure there's no fraud involved. But obviously, the larger the loan, the larger the scrutiny on it's going to be, which is why the SBA has given itself 90 days. The lender notifies the borrower. So if you've put in your application for forgiveness and you haven't heard back, now keep in mind, if the total here is 60 days and then 90 days, right? So you're looking at 5 months potential before you might even hear back. Kind of keep that in mind when you're applying for the forgiveness. So if getting the money back is important to you, don't wait till the last minute. But the lender is the one that's going to let you know, not the SBA. Keep in mind, folks, it's a national, federal organization, hundreds of millions of small businesses across the country. No possible way we can notify you all in a timely fashion. If only a portion of the loan is forgiven, and again, like last time, but there was a lot of confusion, and I know I talked about this last time I was on. Even if you don't make the 60% mark, let's say you have 40% that is payroll related with all the different categories. You'll get forgiven that 40%, but that 60% now becomes a loan. Okay, so whether it's a 2-year loan or a 5-year loan, it's a loan. All right? And interest will accrue during any deferment period.
Okay.
So when can you apply? Anytime after the loan proceeds have been used up, on or before the maturity date, or you can apply at the end of the covered period. All of the loan proceeds for which the borrower is requesting forgiveness have been used. Okay, so meaning you're applying for forgiveness, you know you're only going to use 60%. You know 40% is going to go away. Well, let's say you have the 24 weeks, and you've used up your 60% at week 12. You can apply for forgiveness at that time because the rest is already going to be a loan. You know that. Okay? So this is when you can apply for the forgiveness. So kind of keep that in mind. Again, it's 5 months thereabouts. So it's going to be a while before you get the money back. Right. I'm not saying every loan's going to go 5 months, but I'm a plan for the worst case scenario, hope for the best case scenario kind of guy. I always plan for the worst, and I encourage our small businesses to do the same. So keep that in mind as we go. So there are going to be 2 forms of application small businesses can do. An easy application and then a full application. So think of it as a 1040 EZ and a 1040. So you can do the easy application if you fit one of 3 categories. You're self-employed with no employees and you didn't get any PPP fund for employee salaries. You're a business owner with employees and you did not reduce the annual salary or hourly wages of any employee by 25%, and you didn't reduce the number of employees or average paid hours between January 21 and the end of the covered period after exemptions, or you're that same business owner and the borrower was unable to operate during the covered period at the same level of business activity as before due to compliance with regulations established or guidance issued, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what does that all mean? So if you're a business employer with employees, you didn't reduce annual salaries. Now keep in mind, under the PPP, you are allowed to reduce salary and still meet the forgiveness application, right? The forgiveness criteria, up to 25%, at least for the new one, right? So you can do that. That's perfectly legitimate, but you can't file the easy application if you did, because there's a whole bunch of calculations and stuff that have to be done, and that's all done in the full application. Okay, so take a look at this when you get the slides. Figure it out. It's really pretty straightforward, but I just want you to realize that for a lot of you, the simplified easy application is going to be the one, because a lot of the businesses that we talked to that were able to get their folks to come back, basically brought them back at their full salary.
Right. Al, I'm getting a couple questions does this, say you get the forgiveness, does this become income, operating income? Do you know?
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's
Okay.
an IRS question. You know, it's I haven't heard yet. When I'm done, I'll see if my when I'm done with the presentation, remind me that when we get to questions.
Okay. Well,
And we'll see if Cheryl knows.
Cheryl
Yeah,
Painter's on too.
Yeah, I just unmuted myself. They didn't rule yet on that, so we're still waiting for guidance from the IRS.
Okay.
Okay. And there you go. She's my resident expert. What I don't know, I go to her. All right, back to mute, Cheryl.
I'm going.
All right. So we talked about safe harbor earlier, right? So what that means is, let's say you're trying your best to make sure you meet all the loan forgiveness things, but certain things happen. Well, these address some of the most common. So you reduce your FTE employee levels in the period beginning February 15th, 2020 and April 26th, and you then restored that FTE level by no later than the end of this year, okay, during the pay period that included February 15th. So what does that mean? You came on, but you opened your business, but you just couldn't bring in full employee level, okay? So that's okay as long as you bring up the full employee level by the specified time. Now, I'd be careful. I said this in the first one. I'm going to say it to you now. I would not necessarily wait to the very last minute to do that. In theory, that might work, but in practice, because of how all the math works and stuff, you might get yourself into trouble. But anyway, this is a safe harbor, and I think it's a good one because with everything, you've got the 25% opening, then the 50% opening, then 75% opening, and then 100%. So it's critical that this becomes a realistic safe harbor for everyone. So if you have an FTE, and by the way, for those of you who may not know, full-time equivalent, basically, I believe it's 40-hour work week, might be 35, I don't remember, we'll check that in a bit. If you can document, and we had a lot of this with our PPP, especially our restaurants and certain service industries. If you can show in good faith that you were trying to get folks to come back and you couldn't get them to come back, you'll be covered. So for instance, you're a restaurant. You guys are getting $600 a week, although that ends today or yesterday. On unemployment, they were making $300 a week working for you. They don't want to come back, right? So as long as you show that, you know, and I'll show you the list in a second. But as long as you showed that you tried your best, you got it in writing to get them to come back, you made them a legitimate offer, they didn't come back, and you can prove that, you'll be okay. You'll still qualify for the loan. Again, you're able to unhide, again, for a reduction exception. So again, this is referencing the 60%, okay? Right. So if you can't rehire the employees or you're unable to hire similarly qualified employees for unfilled positions and you can show it, that's fine. How do you show it? Well, in general, let's think of anything. If you're dealing with the government or an institution, you want as much in writing as you can. So a good faith written offer to rehire an employee during the covered period was rejected. So maybe the offer was of the same salary or wages, same number of hours, and it was rejected, and the borrowers maintained records documenting the offer and its rejection. So make the offer, show the offer was rejected, and make sure you keep that information so you can show it to the bank or whoever the lender or whomever you got the loan through. Now, a big question we get with this, do I have to report it to the state? I'm not going to talk about that. That's kind of up to the business. But technically, the answer to that would be yes. And because I work for the federal government, I'm not going to encourage folks to, not abide by the law.
Break the law.
But I cannot tell you what to do on that. I know most businesses are not trying to, I don't want to use that word, mess up their employees. Okay, but just so you know, if employee is on unemployment and they refuse to come back, technically you are supposed to report them. But that's a state issue, not a federal issue. So that's all I'm going to say on that subject. So these last few slides are some of the frequently asked questions that we get a lot of, and I kind of cherry picked them, but these are all again in those documents at SBA.gov and Treasury.gov.
Mhm.
So what effect does a business owner's reduction in employee salary or wages have on the loan forgiveness amount? Basically, if it's under 25%, it's not gonna, it really shouldn't have any effect. If it's over 25%, it will result in a reduction in the loan forgiveness amount, but it's per employee, not in the aggregate. So if you have 10 employees and 2 of them are in excess of 25% as far as their reduction of salary, it's only going to be those 2. It's not going to be, okay, what's the average? It's not going to be down the whole average. How should business owners seeking loan forgiveness account for the salary wage reduction based on a reduction in the number of employees? So it applies only to the portion and decline of employee salary and wages. And again, it is not attributable to the FTE, to the full FTE reduction. Right. So again, you're doing full-time equivalents, and there's different ways of calculating this. I don't remember if I left that slide in because I think it was putting some stuff, but anyway, so pay attention. It's the portion of the decline in employee salary and wages that is not attributable to the FTE reduction. Will the borrower's loan forgiveness amount be reduced if an employee is fired for cause, voluntarily resigns, or voluntarily requests a schedule reduction? The answer is no. Okay, so if any of those things happen, it's not going to affect the forgiveness amount. But again, you have to be able to prove it. You can't say, oh, no, this guy told me this. Here, I'll write it down for you. No, you have to have written proof that this happened. Right. All right. Normally, if we're firing somebody for cause, none of us like to do it. There's plenty of background, but a lot of times, especially for small business, somebody resigns. That's not necessarily in writing. So you need to get them to sign off on something that they are resigning. Okay. Or it's the same thing with the voluntary schedule reduction. A lot of times, small businesses, we're not worried about that kind of stuff. But once you start looking at your forgiveness calculations and those calculations don't add up, you need to be able to prove this. And the way you prove it is through some kind of written documentation. Paper. Yep. You cannot prepay expenses that you think you're going to be incurred. You cannot make advance payments on things that don't fall within the period. Okay, period. There is no forgiveness for that. That will come out of your forgiveness level if you do that. If your payroll dates fall outside the 8 to 24-week window, you can read through this. Basically, there is some flexibility. If it's at least week 25 or something like that, yeah. If you're telling me you want to do it at week 40, well, no, that's not going to happen. But there is some flexibility with the billing and payroll dates falling outside the 24-week window. Same thing with the utility or mortgage payments, okay? Salary, wages, commission payments to furloughed employees, bonuses, or hazard pay during covered period eligible forgiveness. Yeah, they are. This was a big question that we get. So yeah, salary, wages, commission payments, bonuses, I believe also, they can all be covered under the eligible loan forgiveness up to $100,000 salary prorated over the covered period. Okay, that's an important caveat. So $100,000 divided by 12 more or less gives you the payment per month. There are other calculations, I know, but that's generally what you have to be careful of with that particular one. What if I cannot run my business right now, partially or fully? This is the biggest one our small businesses had to get their head around, because by the very nature of small businesses, if I'm not making money, why am I going to pay anybody, right? Well, you got to keep in mind the whole purpose of the PPP was to keep people liquid and to keep businesses liquid, right? So yes, even though you are not open or you are not at full capacity, you are expected to still pay your employees during that time. Okay.
And obviously, Al, and so I get a lot of these, and we're getting a lot of these questions. So if you're paying while you get your PPP, but the PPP runs out, there's not much you can do, and you're closed.
That is correct.
Yeah, that's what a lot of them are dealing with.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate, but that's just what the story is. There's no, it is what it is. You should be paying them during the period that you've chosen.
That you've chosen for the PPP. Now, there's another question. If you get EIDL loans, is part of the PPP, is that taken out of the forgiveness for the PPP?
For many of them, yes.
It
I don't think I included that slide. I'm going to let Cheryl talk to that when we get to the questions.
Okay.
But there are one or two cases where it does not, but for the most part, it does. And the reason for that, and this came in later in the process, we didn't even realize that they were doing it initially, is because they're coming from the same big fund of money. So even though there are limitations on how it can be used, because they're coming from the same big fund of money, the government doesn't allow double dipping, and that's the reason for it. So you can't go to the well twice, at least not right now. And that's why for a lot of these folks, if they got the EIDL, they had to pay. It had to be paid off with PPP money. But when we get to questions, before we get questions, I'll let Cheryl chat with that. So get prepared, Cheryl. Can I hire new staff using the PPP funds? Absolutely. Keep in mind, the number is the number of hours. It's not person, it's hour. It's position, it's hours. It's not the person. So if Joan decided she was going to move out of state and she didn't want the job anymore, and you hired Harry for the same position at the same rate, that's fine. It's all good. You're in compliance. So that's what I have for today. I'm going to take questions, but before I take questions, Cheryl, can you touch on the EIDL and the PPP?
There we go. Sure, absolutely. So the envisioning it as double dipping in the same thing is what would help with just visualizing what to do. So if you have a PPP loan, the suggestion is to use it fully through the covered period, and then use the EIDL loan if you're going to be using it for payroll. So make sure you're not using it at the same time, or just making sure that you are using the proceeds for non-payroll and after the PPP period. If you start to commingle and say, oh, I'll use this for PPP, I'll use this for EIDL, it gets very convoluted, and it'll be very difficult for you to keep it clean, so to speak, for if you ever get audited. And although the SBA is focusing on larger loans, they do have the right to audit you at any time for any reason at any amount. So you really need to keep those records for up to 6 years. The other question we continue to get is about EIDL advances. It looks like the full amount is going to be reduced from the PPP loan forgiveness. So if you get a $20,000 PPP and you get a $10,000 advance, it looks like it's going to be subtracted from that. However, the guidance hasn't been written in full. So we are waiting for that particular notice to state that it doesn't matter what it was used for, that it will get reduced from the loan forgiveness. But I am looking for that like a hawk, for that just to be written. So once we do, that will get distributed. The other question, I was perusing on the IRS website just to try to get the most up-to-date information. And there is a notice, and that notice states that the payroll part that's forgiven does not have to be subtracted, taxed as income. However, you have to keep in mind that you can't use that to reduce costs as a business write-off. So you have to, again, keep it clean and make sure that if you're using it and you're not going to be taxed on it, you can't also then use it as a write-off. So that's the nuance there.
Yeah. Excellent, Cheryl. Tony, did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Dale. A general question for Al and Cheryl. Just any thoughts on why $100 billion is still unspent? And yesterday we had Congressman Gottheimer and Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill on a call. The good news that they reported yesterday is if there's any agreement between the Democrats and Republicans in Congress is that the amount of money for the next round of PPP will probably work itself out. I think the Senate is in next week. The question is more or less, you know, what that final number is going to be. But any thoughts on why $100 billion is still hanging out there and it wasn't spent and distributed?
Because I think everybody who read this, in my opinion, there's a couple of reasons. I think a lot of people initially applied. You know, we had that whole first 3-4 weeks, it was a nightmare, you know. And so everybody who really needed it applied, number one. Number two, a lot of people were afraid. They weren't, because there was a lot of, look, let me be honest, there was a lot of lack of clarity with how, you know, this was going to be repaid. Quite honestly, really just getting clarity over the last couple of weeks. So people were afraid to use it, you know. So I think I knew small businesses that actually got the money and were hanging on to it, you know, because they didn't know how the forgiveness was going to work. And I think at this point, you know, we're actually at a state where folks have figured out how to survive, or they just don't want to take on the extra potential debt that a PPP loan could get them. That's totally a guess, just from the couple of businesses I've spoken to. But I think nationwide, because we've been letting folks know as much as we can, you know, there's still a lot of PPP money left. But, you know, either, you know, it's, I mean, it could also be, I don't think this is as much of an issue. Some lenders stopped doing it, especially during round 2. But I don't think that's as much of an issue as folks just, either they're not comfortable with it, they don't want to take on the added debt, or they've already gotten what they can. Now, I think there's a lot of small businesses that would love to go for a second round.
Right.
Well, you know,
But
and
they
it's,
can't.
but it's interesting because that point came up in our event yesterday, and hopefully in the new legislation, I guess the new tranche, they're going to make it clear that, hey, if you've gotten PPP money before and this bill passes next week or the following week, you know, they're going to encourage people to reapply for a second round, like you said.
Well,
Because,
it's got to be in the legislation, because
right.
it has a specific, I mean, they're legislators, so hopefully, you know, they know that.
The good
But,
news is they mentioned that, you know, they mentioned that they're specifically going to try to write that language in there to say, hey, this is for a round 2 now. So everybody that got round 1 back in April, May.
And I think that'll be a huge help.
I agree.
And also one of the things that I hear, see, I'm going to do this even though I know I shouldn't, because as folks that know me know, I'm more than willing to get myself into trouble. One of the other things I hear about is that, you know, they really want to target the smaller businesses, which I think is absolutely incredible. If you can really target, you know, those businesses that, most of the businesses we're talking about didn't need $5 and $10 million. Most of the businesses we're talking about needed $500,000, maybe $1 million. If they're targeting those kinds of folks, you know, that can come in, they can come in for their second round, I think that we'll have a lot of hope. And before I get a lot of complaints, I understand there are small businesses that might need more than $1 million, but very few. The average loan size is, I don't remember, Carrie, you know offhand, it's something like $300,000, and that was the combined. The second round loan size is way small. I think it's under 100,000. You know, so that's what most of our folks need, with at least under the current guidance.
Right.
Okay, so that's what I would love to see, and I know most of my colleagues across the country, because these are who we're dealing with. I mean, SBA standard for small business is 500 people, right? Generally speaking. I mean, there are caveats to everything, you know, but most people I know, 500 people is not a small business, right? And for most people we're dealing with, 50 to 100 is probably the smallest business that we at SBA generally deal with. So yeah, I think under the new program, if folks can come in and get that second shot at the PPP, I think you'll see another big run, but hopefully this time we're better prepared for it.
Yeah, thank you.
Good.
And I just want to make a quick plug for the SBDCs. They are offering free business counseling through this PPP process. And they're one of our official resource partners. And the state has actually given them money to help people. So if you need help, like somebody to help you sit down with your applications, I highly encourage you to go to NJSBDC, their website, and you click on your county and your local SBDC will pop up and you can go visit and contact them.
And Cheryl, I would add as well, the African American Chamber, the Hispanic Chamber are helping as well. They've gotten funding from EDA to do that. So if you go to the SBDC as well, so they're fantastic. All of them are fantastic.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, and so just I want to piggyback on what Al's saying. Most businesses are really sole proprietorships. And we went over it again, but could you repeat, because I know many people on this are sole proprietorships. What can they get with the PPP?
You want me to take that?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to put it up so that they can see.
Yeah,
Okay,
please.
sure. So whatever you report on your, I think it's your K2, line 14, is what you can report as the income that could be paid for your PPP. In addition is what Al has up there on the screen.
Good, because I get this all the time, and most businesses fall into this category.
Right.
And they were forgotten, and they've been forgotten. But
and that point about what you paid in 2019, I've gotten a lot of questions for people who are asking if they can utilize part of their mortgage for their home because they have a home-based business. And I always push that back to them. And I say, well, in 2019, what part of that mortgage did you report and, as a business expense? And if they didn't report anything in 2019, then they can't utilize that for PPP. So the real onus is on what you did in 2019 as a business expense.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. You got to keep in mind these are comparisons for the PPP, right? So everything's being compared to last year when everything was quote normal unquote. Okay, so yeah, I mean that's a great point Cheryl makes.
And we're almost at the out of time, and if you have some additional questions, again, at rothman@fdu.edu, send us the questions. We'll get them to Al. And now that we know Cheryl, thank you so much for being part of this. We appreciate both of you coming. This is valuable information, and we had a good crowd. I don't know why anybody who has a small business is not here, because we're about to hear some things coming out from Congress. What's gone on with the current program. This is really critical stuff if you have a small business. And so a couple of things that I'm hearing. One is paperwork, that you've got to have paper or you're in real trouble. Work with your lenders. And this information allows you to talk to your lender. And so the lender tells you something that counters what you heard here. You should go back and say, hey, we heard from the head of the SBA that you're supposed to, make applications. So any final comments, Al?
Yeah, I have a couple to those points. If you are a lender and you have questions, reach out to Cheryl. She's my expert. You can reach out to me, but I'm just going to send you over to Cheryl. But we're doing trainings. We're doing a lot of lender trainings on forgiveness. It's still somewhat of a moving target. Keep that in mind, both lender and borrower. But if you need training, we're going to do that. To the fraud part, I stress this every time I do. You're dealing with the federal government. You don't want to mess around. SBA, generally, if we're going to have an issue with someone, We try to work with them. We try to do the best we can. But in the end, if you're defaulting and you're not working with us and you're, for lack of a better term, kind of being a jerk and you're not paying attention, it's a federal program. Our loans, the worst case scenario is they will get turned over to the IRS. And trust me, you don't want that to happen. SBA is going to work with everyone we can to make sure that you get as much credit as you can, as much paycheck protection money as you can, and that you get as much forgiveness as you can. But remember, these are federal monies, they're federal dollars. Just because you're going to be concentrating on the big loans, as Cheryl said earlier, doesn't mean that you are going to be immune.
Right.
Be straightforward, be honest. You should be able to get a decent amount of money through the PPP program. If you're going to apply now. You have a week. I would strongly encourage you all to apply now for the money. It's there. If you haven't applied, take advantage of it. Keep in mind, you don't have to take it, but once the application period is gone, it's gone.
It's gone.
What we don't want is folks to say, you know what, I was thinking about it, I wish I did that. Do it. And then if you don't want it, when they come back to fund you, they say, yeah, no thanks, I don't want it. No harm, no foul. You know,
that's an important point. Well, we're at time, unfortunately, and Al, I want to thank you very much. Cheryl, I want to thank you for coming on. Tony, as always, thank you very much. I want to thank everybody. We had a nice crowd to listen in. We're going to get out the PowerPoint slides to everybody that signed up for this this webinar. And also, this will be probably in a week or so on our Rothman Institute channel. So if you missed it or you want to see it again, it'll be recorded. So thank you all very much. Have a wonderful weekend, and we really, really appreciate your time.
Yeah,
thanks.
you.
Take care, folks.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.